The project is described as having begun 43 years earlier, with the journey since called a wild adventure. It is regarded as a work that captured imagination and revealed a world never previously conceived, noted for being groundbreaking and ahead of its time, and considered an honor to be part of such a legacy. The undertaking is characterized in many ways as a masterpiece, one that pushes boundaries in both technology and concept, and is said to have started off with a big bang. Having been involved with 3 installments of the franchise, the shift from the original film to this latest chapter is described as phenomenal. When approaching a sequel, creating something new while keeping it familiar is emphasized as essential. The element most prevalent upon taking on the project is identified as the grids, with 3 distinct and unique grids featured in the film, each shaped significantly by color. A deliberate choice was made to introduce primary tones, with a red world attempted for the first time. The Dillinger grid was felt from the outset to lean red across costumes, tone, and feel. A complementary palette was sought for NCOM, landing on tones likened to Aston Martin's silver greens, which became the visual through line for that grid. A major sequence involves transfer into what is referred to as the Flynn grid, evoking a strong sense of the 1980s described as amazing. Involvement of Jeff Bridges was considered essential from the start. After years spent making a film, a sense of safety is only felt once the actor stands in front of the camera. The space created is described as wide open, with everything allowed and imagination fully called forth. The working atmosphere with the director is recalled as casual and playful, encouraging experimentation with futuristic ideas despite serious work happening underneath, resulting in a wonderful environment in which to create. Jeff Bridges is portrayed as a naturalistic performer who nonetheless prepared deeply, fully returning to the character of Flynn for the role. Admiration for Jeff Bridges is expressed as extending to him being seen as a great human being and an incredible, fun, and easy-to-love actor, making every moment spent with him on set feel sacred. Having him involved is called a privilege, with the character of Flynn immediately recognizable the instant he speaks, summed up as Flynn living on. The light suits were designed to move the visual language forward while honoring what came before, offering something new, yet still nodding to earlier Tron films and feeling grounded in the real world. The original film's costuming is remembered as a resourceful mix of lacrosse helmets and spandex, inventive despite limited means, contrasted with this installment's highly technical, fully illuminated suits. Each suit is built from multiple LED strands running behind colored diffuser components, with its own DMX board allowing on-set color adjustment between torso and legs. The disc and helmet are wired on separate channels, and every suit carries its own addressable channel, enabling fine-tuned balance across the whole costume. Wearing the suit is described as inherently transporting, creating the sensation of standing inside the grid itself. The costume is likened to becoming a creature covered in armor and lights, complete with a disc on the back, heavy to wear but considered worthwhile. Wearing the suits is noted as genuinely difficult, with training ultimately focused less on stunts and more on managing the physical restriction imposed by the costume, which shapes posture and feeling and lends real character to the performance, summed up simply as badass. The character Ares is framed as essentially an artificial intelligence, offering creative freedom described as limitless. A defining concept is the idea of digital assets crossing into the real world, something not previously seen on screen and viewed as closely mirroring a present-day reality in which the boundary between real and virtual continues to blur. Light cycles are regarded as iconic and among the most beloved elements of the franchise, holding a distinct place in film and vehicle history since their original design by Sid Mead. A new Dillinger version offered creative license to take the vehicle in a different direction. A couple were built alongside a set of proxy bikes, roughly a dozen electric Harley-Davidsons matching the light cycle's profile, reflecting a continued investment in practical effects, including sequences driven through downtown Vancouver on the computerized bikes, described as genuinely exciting. The jump jet vehicle was conceived as a cross between an F-16 fighter jet and a flying wingsuit, while the light skimmer was designed as a watercraft comparable to a jet ski, described as an homage to speed bike chases through forest terrain in earlier science fiction cinema. Films of this scale typically rely heavily on green or blue screen work completed in post-production, but this production instead built extensive physical sets, with the care and craftsmanship involved described as incredible. The results are said to convey both massive scale and tactile realism due to meticulous attention paid to every detail. Coordinating action sequences involving numerous vehicles within the grid's world building is described as extremely complex, with a strong preference for capturing as much as possible practically in camera. One planned sequence involves a light wall splitting a police vehicle in two, achieved using a car pre-cut down the middle with independent power and steering on each side, allowing the halves to separate on cue, flip, and skid to a stop. An accomplished stunt team supported the production, though performers took on much of the physical work personally, including being suspended by wire and dropped from the top of a building. Jodie Turner-Smith is praised for performing her own stunts throughout, a rarity among actors. Being cast to portray a formidable character is often undercut by restrictions on performing the role fully, but here that freedom was granted, resulting in scenes described as genuinely intimidating, reinforced by being chased by someone compared to a track athlete needing no formal training. A favorite sequence involves crashing into the ENCOM offices, delivering a moment likened to a Terminator-style entrance complete with a large laser effect. Set on the 61st floor of the ENCOM building, the sequence involves a jump jet-shaped rig flying through rear glass, across a boardroom, and into the office before landing among a cluster of tables. It was filmed in a single take using a tested rig pulled along a track by ratchet at roughly 50 kilometers per hour, with the rig itself weighing about 3,000 pounds. Involvement of Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, regarded as among the finest film composers working today, is highlighted, particularly as this marks their first scoring work situated within the creative lineage of Nine Inch Nails, something considered uniquely exciting. Nine Inch Nails is regarded as legendary and long associated with technological themes and boundary-pushing artistry. Awareness that the band would score the film shaped preparation during shooting, with their music used to establish tone, ultimately helping distinguish this installment from earlier entries in the series. Riding the light cycle, viewing the recognizers and light skimmers, and looking out across the grid are all described as powerful experiences and a genuine joy to be part of. Reflecting on the overall experience, the most meaningful takeaway is described as the connection felt with a younger self who once sat in a theater watching the original film, transported to another time and place, now paired with the opportunity to work alongside Jeff Bridges and the wider cast, an experience considered defining and offered as proof that dreams remain possible. It is suggested that if the hardware of the future can be created, a soldier should exist to operate it. Reflection turns to how iconic the light cycles were in both Tron Legacy and the original Tron film, with those scenes noted as remaining among audience favorites, prompting the question of how to elevate them further. A directive follows demanding that Eve Kim be brought within 29 minutes. Standby is called as filming proceeds at 80% speed. A Tron film made in the real world is described as requiring a light cycle chase filmed for real, one that feels grittier and more authentic, with an ongoing effort to remain at the edge of what is possible. The scene is likened to an homage to Return of the Jedi before a countdown launches the take. The speeder bikes are shown racing through a forest resembling the Redwoods, incorporating sound effects originally used in Return of the Jedi. 6 weeks were spent filming downtown after Vancouver was closed down so that light cycles could be driven through the streets. A target is identified, and a performer is recalled running until exhaustion, with the sheer volume of running remarked upon more than once. Certain sequences were judged better performed for real, supported by an incredible stunt team, though much of the work was also carried out independently. A frequently asked question concerns how much of the production relies purely on imagination and screens, with emphasis placed on this footage being largely practical. Shouting is followed by another countdown, and it is explained that many of the action sequences take place downtown, including a confrontational exchange challenging someone to fight. Proxy bikes were used, consisting of roughly a dozen electric Harley-Davidsons specially built to match the profile of the light cycle. Fitted with lights, these proxies were driven through each shot so the light would reflect correctly on streets, water, and buildings, allowing Industrial Light and Magic to later add computer-generated bikes on top of the practical footage. The take ends with a call to cut, followed by praise for the result. A public address announcement confirms that a transfer is complete. Bringing digital assets into the film's world allowed a light cycle to be seen racing down a mountain road or across a freeway while emitting a light trail, something never shown before in a Tron film. A strong preference existed for shooting the sequence as practically as possible, though with bikes reaching speeds of 150 miles an hour, some of it proved impossible to achieve for real. An order rings out demanding that the motorcycle rider pull over. The sequence is described as shot entirely in camera, with the resulting realism felt especially in the light cycle chase, a result regarded with considerable pride. Being on the light cycle itself is described as powerful, earning the label classic. Riding it personally on a daily basis is recalled as genuinely exciting. Being out on the streets of Vancouver at night, in the rain, racing motorcycles and crashing cars is described as an experience worth bringing to life as authentically as possible, forming a deliberate contrast against the film's virtual world. Credit is given to an amazing special effects team in Vancouver, who rigged 6 pre-cut police cars, cutting them in half and stitching them back together so each vehicle could be pulled by a truck on a 100-foot wire to reach the necessary speed. At a certain point, remote-controlled charges were triggered to blow apart and split each car in half. After that, the halves were pulled apart and dragged along on their sides, while Industrial Light and Magic later added a light wall passing through the gap. Given the healthy budget available for a production of this scale, this level of practical effect is felt to be owed to the audience, and with 6 cameras already rigged, doing it for real made sense. The first 2 takes are recalled as failures since the car split, but both halves went to the same side, an outcome that cannot always be controlled when the effect is done for real. The bridge had to be closed once more, so a second unit could attempt the shot again, this time getting the halves to spread in the correct direction, a result attributed to dedication. For many compositors and artists at visual effects companies such as Industrial Light and Magic, Tron represents something they grew up with and regard as a major inspiration, almost a holy grail within visual effects. A team is described as eager at the sight of the artwork, excited by the chance to work with these vehicles and bring them to life within this world. This particular light cycle design dates back to 2013, long admired for its mechanics and the way it comes together, pushing the production forward in a way considered genuinely impressive. 2 distinct riding positions exist, a low position in which the rider is fully integrated into the machine, and an upright position in which the helmet retracts, allowing the actors' faces to be seen. The design is described as feeling fresh and exciting while remaining recognizable within what audiences expect from Tron. Working alongside some of the best artists in the world is described as something that can be felt in the final result. Industrial Light and Magic is regarded as the best visual effects house in the world, a company associated with quality and a willingness to take risks and break boundaries. An engine roars, as the standard of artistry is described as extremely high, with more than 2,000 visual effects shots contained in the film, a scale considered daunting to approach and difficult to know where to begin. Watching the film while still editing and cutting it together proves almost impossible, since half of it remains incomplete until the very last moment. Amid further shouting and roaring engines, the overall experience is summed up as amazing, like being a kid in a candy store. Every day is described as a pinch-my-arm moment, walking out onto the sets and stepping into master control before hopping onto the light cycle. Standing there, fully lit up on the grid, is called the coolest thing ever witnessed, prompting exclamations that it looks cool. A question is raised about how hard it was to keep faith while assembling so many different elements that individually felt technical, tedious, or challenging, yet needed to add up to something amazing. The response describes initially agreeing, but then, moving into post-production and watching visual effects artists work their magic, that feeling never gets old. Sound is added next, followed by music layered on top, with a nod to having received a little help from a friend. Suddenly, everything starts to feel different, prompting confusion over what it means to feel it in that way. Moments of solitude on the physical sets built for the grid are recalled, with the care, effort, and craftsmanship behind these builds described as incredible, transporting to another place entirely. This carries into a nod to the 80s and a greeting exchanged as though addressing a program. Warnings about the suit are mentioned, alongside memories of seeing early sketches and watching the original film as a child. In the first movie, the suit combined lacrosse helmets and spandex with foam and glued-on pieces, described as inventive despite limited resources. By contrast, the suits for this production are highly technical and fully lit up, packed with circuit boards, sound components, and other elements that helped bring the character to life. A question about identity is met with a declaration of being master control, and being inside the suit is said to feel like being inside the grid itself, with armor, lights everywhere, and a disc on the back, followed by a camera move away before the disc is thrown. The suit is described as loved, even though it was heavy and painful at times, but ultimately worth it. Asked about first seeing a skimmer, the light skimmer is described as the product of a long process to make it feel authentically fitting for the world of the film. This scene is named a favorite in the movie, one where notes usually taper off for about 5 minutes purely out of enjoyment, called the best compliment ever received. Sitting on the light skimmer for a couple of days is recalled fondly, largely because of the wind, motion, and the bike itself, which combine to create a strong sense of really being there. The experience is described as never feeling stiff or forced, but genuinely enjoyable. Working with the film's musicians is described as amazing, noting how they elevate everything they touch, tinged with a bit of intimidation given their reputation, yet remaining highly collaborative with ideas of their own. At the same time, protectiveness over the film's music is acknowledged, along with a reluctance to tamper too much with their vision. Asked what was most surprising about the music's impact on the film, mixing the sound on stage is recalled as an exhilarating experience. Certain moments were deliberately built around placing the music front and center, stripping back other sounds so that voices remain audible while the song plays largely on its own. In light cycle sequences, sound effects were allowed to breathe more, a priority for the composers, with the music delivered through the front speakers much like hearing it live at a concert, sound effects surrounding the listener, while the music thumps from behind the screen, described as impossible to get enough of. Complete commitment to the project is expressed, crediting it with revealing a world never imagined before and underscoring the importance of stepping back to reflect on oneself while creating something of this scale. The overall experience is framed as a fortunate opportunity to play in that creative sandbox. On the first film, dance belts were worn by the cast, with confusion expressed over what exactly the garment was. It was described as a strap positioned tightly against the body, making sitting down a genuinely difficult task, a memory that prompted shared laughter. Reflection turned to the idea that certain films come along and quietly change a person, transcending even the highest expectations held going into the project. Recalling the first day on set together, it was noted that actors bring many different approaches to their craft. A request had been made to be addressed only by a character's name, Ares, prompting a question about whether the reference was to the god of war, which was confirmed. A nickname shortening the name to Air was proposed and accepted, followed by an introduction using another character's name, Kevin Flynn, along with the claim of having created the grid and a sense of kinship expressed through the idea of existing in that moment because of the other's presence. What followed was described as an enjoyable creative exchange between the two. The first day inside the Red Room was recalled, depicting a scene in which a character returns from being printed and is greeted by another character confirming that all units are online and ready for inspection, followed by a compliment about how good the light suit looked. Attention shifted to the costumes, described as a memorable experience. The suit was reported to weigh around 45 pounds, requiring 3 people to help put it on, and was described as uncomfortable and painful to wear. The sets themselves were noted as enormous, comparable to an airline hangar, and admiration was expressed for how intensity brought to the space was matched and filled despite the scale. A follow-up remark about an unanswered question was met with acknowledgement that an attempt had been made to avoid answering, leading to more laughter. A question was raised about willingness to actually drive a Tron light cycle. An affirmative response followed with the caveat that the required stance involves lying down in a fully horizontal position, which was agreed to be extremely uncomfortable for human anatomy, though still something that would be amazing to experience. It was recalled that watching the original 1982 film marked a first exposure to the other's work, making the current moment together feel surreal. A favorite part of working together was mentioned, referring to a scene involving a slap, which drew amusement at being singled out as a favorite memory. Both were noted to have performed a significant number of their own stunts. Acting opposite genuinely impressive practical machinery built for the production was highlighted as a favorite experience. One stunt involved falling through glass in order to escape a scene, though it proved difficult to perform without breaking into screaming and laughter, reactions considered unsuitable for the character. On the final day of shooting, the stunt was repeated for real while wearing the light suit, which was described as an especially thrilling experience, likened to rarely getting the chance to be dropped from the sky. A question was posed about whether it would be desirable to be friends, in real life, with the Dillinger characters, given their notably dark decor. The response was negative, citing their aesthetic and dubious moral compass as reasons to avoid friendship. A remembered film line about hacking into NCOM was referenced. Having played numerous serious characters, comparison was drawn to playing a Dillinger character, generally stern in nature, though noted to possess an underlying sense of humor. A film line was recalled in which a character declares that once the world sees what has been created, all will be forgiven. Appreciation was expressed for the character's driven, almost obsessive nature in trying to succeed and live up to expectations, illustrated by another film line challenging the assumption of being in control. It was noted that outside pressure and fear of failure combined to create a kind of monster, a theme underscored by reference to a checkmate line from the film. Getting to revisit what was considered the coolest franchise of all time was described as an amazing experience. A question about nervousness was met with an affirmative response. A remembered line commanding that units be shut down was referenced, alongside a description of stepping onto the grid as feeling incredible. Having been a devoted fan of the original film as a child, credit was given to it for sparking an early interest in technology and creativity and for awakening imagination more broadly. Being present decades later, 43 years on, and back on the grid was noted as a particularly surreal full-circle moment. Filming was cut at that point, with a comment made about only just having gotten warmed up met with laughter. It was mentioned that additional questions were still wanted to be asked. A greeting is issued, followed by an announcement calling for safety glasses to be put on. Attention is drawn to 3 films and terabytes of mythology embedded in the code, with a note that the newest entry in the franchise, Tron Ares, contains plenty of secret programming to uncover. The directive is described as clear, and a return to the grid is proposed to locate Easter eggs and other nods hidden by the filmmakers. Entry into the grid is confirmed. Discussion turns to the figure who started the franchise, whose office is recreated museum-style inside Encom headquarters, a display donated by his son. That recreation is noted as having been inspired by the preserved office of Walt Disney at the Disney Studios lot in Burbank, California. The detail is met with a note of fascination. The character is identified as portrayed by an actor appearing in all 3 Tron films, described as a visionary programmer and pioneer of the digital frontier. Credit is given for creating the first-person arcade game featured in the original Tron, later elevated to full convention status within Tron, Ares, with the game itself called Pretty Cool and a greeting extended to that convention. The current costume design seen on the grid is traced back to the original 1982 Tron outfit, a connection met with approval. Beyond programming, an avid gaming habit is highlighted, along with a signature line about playing style involving the wrists, a phrase noted to reappear in Tron Ares. A final look at the video games inside Encom headquarters reveals titles that also appear in Tron Legacy, alongside a pinball machine referencing Disney's 1979 science fiction film The Black Hole. That same reference resurfaces as a poster hanging in a bedroom in Tron Legacy, prompting a remark calling it a classic touch. News clippings reveal that a son and a mysterious woman have been missing since the end of Tron Legacy, while the father is noted to have vanished back in 1989. In Tron, Ares, the current CEO of Encom, is likewise shown starting the film missing, reachable only by voicemail, prompting a question about her whereabouts. Beyond CEO status, genius-level programming ability, and unexplained absences, all 3 characters are noted to share one more trait. Each drives a Ducati when not riding a light cycle, a detail met with an appreciative laugh. Attention shifts to another family tree within the franchise, tracing back to a grandfather who founded the Dillinger Corporation long before the term cybersecurity existed. While one family has always represented the heroes of the series, this family has consistently played the villains. A recurring catchphrase is highlighted, noted as both the name of a nightclub in Tron Legacy and a line repeated by the antagonist system in the original Tron. An iconic vehicle associated with the villainous family is called out, with its silhouette shown to be built into the design of a data disk featured in Tron Ares. A moment of confusion is voiced at the vehicle's sudden appearance, followed by a declaration of control from the antagonist system. Sharp-eyed viewers are invited to spot several cameos woven through the film, beginning with a favorite polyhedral character from the original Tron and extending to a Master of Ceremonies appearance at the in-film convention. A social media personality is pointed out among the crowd, along with a call to like and subscribe. A businessman, author, and internet personality is noted as having been recruited onto the villainous corporation's board, while a real AI researcher appears interviewing the missing CEO character, filmed the same night she delivered an actual TED Talk on artificial intelligence in April 2024. A musician's brother is spotted grabbing a slice at a pizza parlor, and the film's actual composers are shown flying past in fighter jets, identified as the duo behind a well-known industrial rock act. Further musical references are noted, including a t-shirt worn by the CEO character that nods to the electronic duo who scored Tron Legacy. A separate reference to a British band's 1982 hit, which charted at number 8 in the UK, is tied to the same year the original Tron was released, prompting a rhetorical question about coincidence. A sticker referencing the distance to Mars is clarified not as a space travel joke, but as a nod to a musician's rock band. The sheer volume of detail is acknowledged as a lot to process, with confirmation that the objective has been achieved. Viewers are encouraged to watch Tron Ares again with close attention, as still more may remain to be decoded before the segment closes with a farewell dismissal.